Who are you talking about?
Sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? You call some of the members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical of some members of the Supreme Court.
You're embarrassed that you made that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an officer
Senator, it doesn't sound like something that I would say.
You know what I'm embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil in the classroom,
on
sir.
Your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon.
Patriots, welcome back to Founding Voice America, where we don't mince words, we don't sugarcoat, and we sure as hell don't bow down to political correctness. Today's topic cuts straight to the heart of what's wrong with our judiciary, our legal system, and frankly, the elite class that's teaching our future generations to hate this country from the ground up. I just watched a Senate hearing where Senator John Kennedy grilled a panel of so-called legal experts on the use and abuse of nationwide injunctions. And let me tell you something, this wasn't just a dry legal discussion. It was a clear window into the soul-rotting hypocrisy and double standards infecting our legal institutions. If you care about the Constitution, about equal justice, and about reigning in judicial tyranny, you need to pay attention. Let's break this down, piece by piece. And buckle up, because I'm coming in hot. Let me ask you something, patriots. If a federal judge gives an order, should we follow it blindly, no matter how absurd, unconstitutional, or politically motivated it is? According to this panel of ivory tower elites, the answer is, well, maybe, if we feel like it. One of the so-called professors actually said he wouldn't rule out defying a court order if it was egregious enough. Excuse me. Since when do we allow subjective feelings about what's egregious to justify ignoring the law? Here's the irony. These same folks demand compliance with court orders when they're aimed at conservatives. They love it when judges issue orders blocking President Trump's immigration policies, his efforts to secure the border, or his attempts to undo Biden's mess. But the minute it's a conservative ruling, suddenly, they're flipping through the law books looking for loopholes. That's not justice. That's selective lawfare. And it's tearing this country apart. And then we get to the meat of the issue, nationwide injunctions. These are rulings by one single federal judge that stop an entire policy dead in its tracks across the whole country. Let me say that again. One unelected judge can block a law or executive order that affects 330 million Americans. How is that democratic? How is that constitutional? These activists in black robes aren't judges anymore, they're wannabe legislators. They're not interpreting the law, they're writing it. And they're doing it because they know they can't win in Congress or at the ballot box. So instead, they weaponize the courts to impose their radical vision on the rest of us. And what do these so-called legal experts say about it? Some of them defend it, some waffle, and one even admits both Republicans and Democrats are guilty of it. Okay, great. So you all agree it's being abused, and yet none of you have the guts to say it should be stopped outright? Give me a break.
Would any of you advise a client to defy a federal court order?
No.
None of you would? How about you, Professor?
I mean, under most circumstances, we follow the government and private parties follow court orders. I suppose I would not rule out ever the possibility that in a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration of whether there's a way.
So in some cases,
I think it's a qualified answer, yes.
In some cases you would.
In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered, yes.
Okay. Do any of you think that nationwide or universal injunctions are not being abused?
I'm not sure what if I may, Senator, I'm not sure what the time horizon of the question is. I don't think that there could be good faith disagreements about the correctness of some of them, but I have not seen in the last 4 months
Professor, you're
abuse.
smart.
No.
I've read your stuff, and I've read your writings. I don't want to get bogged down with this, but I have little respect for your opinion because I've read your stuff. When someone is in the White House that you agree with, and someone gets a universal injunction against him, you don't like universal injunctions. You called them judges acting like they're politicians in robes and judges looking like crass political actors. But now that President Trump's in the White House, who you dislike, you think that universal injunctions taste like pumpkin pie. So I have to discount what you say because I think you act on your political beliefs. And I worry that that's what you're teaching your kids. So I'll leave you out of that. Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is.
They're being abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now, your suggestion is that when a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited right of appeal. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you disagree with that?
I haven't given enough thought to have a position on it, Senator.
I suspect, Professor, your answer will be it depends on who's president.
No, Senator.
Let me ask you about this. What if we had a rule? I was reading an article the other day. I'm not suggesting it. I just want your opinions. That said, if a president, any president, issues an executive order, let's say, that clearly violates settled Supreme Court precedent, that a federal judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. For example, if a federal a president issued an order that said no one in America has right to counsel any longer, including but not limited to, in a felony case, having the government pay for your lawyer if you can't afford it. That clearly violates settled Gideon v. Wainwright. In that case, a judge has no authority or does have authority to issue a nationwide injunction. But in a case where the law is unclear, a judge should refrain from that. Now, obviously, we'd have to trust our judges, but we're supposed to be able to trust them anyway. What do you think about that?
I don't agree with that, Senator, because I think universal injunctions transgress the limitations under Article 3, even if the underlying merits are clear.
I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's any basis under Article 3, under Supreme Court precedent, under the English common law for nationwide injunctions. I think politicians have helped judges, and many judges are politicians, to just make it up. And many of them are like Professor Shaw here. If they like the president, they're against nationwide injunctions. If they don't like the president, they're for him. Professor, let me ask you this while I have you. On April 22nd, 2024, you said there are some members of the Supreme Court that are evil. Which justices were you talking about?
I'll take it your word, Senator. I don't recall using that word, but.
All right, here's what you said. You were talking about the majority opinion in Muldrow v. City of St. Louis. You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who are you talking about?
Sir, I'm very skeptical. If there's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? You call some of the members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical
You're
of some members of the
that
Supreme
you made
Court.
that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an officer
Senator, it
of the
doesn't sound
court.
like something that
You know
I
what
would
I'm
say.
embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil
You did,
in the
right here
in the classroom,
on
sir.
your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
Big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon. You're part of what's the problem in all of this.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Durbin.
So I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to.
Now here's where it gets even more disturbing. Senator Kennedy brought up a quote, straight from a legal professor who called certain members of the Supreme Court evil. That's right. Evil. Not wrong. Not misguided. Not, I disagree with their interpretation. No, evil. And this wasn't a slip of the tongue in private. This was on a broadcast. This was on the record. This man, who teaches law to your kids and mine, said that his fellow officers of the court, Supreme Court justices, are evil. And when Kennedy confronted him about it, what did the professor say? Oh, maybe it was a transcription error. Liar. You said it. Own it. But he wouldn't. He danced around it, evaded responsibility, and finally tried to deny it altogether. This is the level of integrity we're dealing with, folks. These are the people lecturing us about the rule of law. These are the people shaping the future lawyers and judges of America. And they have the audacity to slander Supreme Court justices because they don't like how they rule? You can't make this up. If a conservative professor said liberal justices were evil, the media would crucify him. But when a left-wing academic slanders the court because he doesn't like the Constitution being upheld, silence. This is the double standard. This is the rot. The politicization of our judiciary is the biggest threat to our republic since the days of King George. When liberal judges issue nationwide injunctions against Trump, like they did over travel bans, border enforcement, or student loans, they're hailed as heroes by the media and the academic elite. But when conservative judges stand up for the Constitution, suddenly they're dangerous, radical, or, in this professor's case, evil. Let me tell you something. We didn't fight a revolution so that one activist judge in San Francisco could dictate national policy. That's not how our system is supposed to work. That's not checks and balances, that's dictatorship in a robe. And what did Senator Kennedy propose? Something completely reasonable, that if a judge issues a nationwide injunction, it should be paused automatically and rushed to an appeals court. Sounds like common sense, right? Apparently, not to the professors. One of them couldn't even take a position on it. Another gave the classic "it depends on who's president" answer, though he tried to deny it. But we know the game. They defend the system when it helps their side and trash it when it helps ours. That's not law. That's politics. So where does this leave us, America? It leaves us with a judiciary that's been hijacked by partisan hacks. It leaves us with law schools teaching students to defy judges they disagree with politically. It leaves us with an entire class of so-called experts who only care about process when it benefits their ideological agenda. And it leaves us, we the people, on our own to defend the Constitution. Let me be clear, nationwide injunctions need to end. Judges are not kings. The Constitution doesn't give them nationwide veto power over executive orders. That power belongs to the legislative branch, and to us, the American people, through our votes. And while we're at it, maybe it's time for some of these professors who use their position to indoctrinate instead of educate to be shown the door. You don't get to teach future lawyers while calling the highest court in the land evil, because it doesn't serve your politics. That's disgraceful. That's anti-American. Patriots, if we're going to preserve this republic, it's going to take more than just voting. It's going to take pushing back against judicial overreach, speaking out against academic brainwashing, and calling out hypocrisy wherever we see it, especially when it wears a suit and tie and hides behind a podium. We are the last line of defense. And if we don't fight for the Constitution now, there won't be anything left for our kids to inherit. So share this video, subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me, should nationwide injunctions be banned? Should judges who legislate from the bench be removed? Should law professors who slander the court be held accountable? Because here on Founding Voice America, we speak the truth, unapologetically. And we will not be silenced. God bless you. God bless President Trump. And God bless the United States of America.